أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. All praise is due to Allah, and may His peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We bear witness that no one is worthy of worship but Allah, and we bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is indeed His final messenger. I begin by greeting my brothers and sisters, the youth and the elders, by saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for the invitation, and also Jazakallah khair for picking a topic that is of great importance to our Muslim community, to its present as well as its future. Here is one thing that I like to do every time I go to a masjid. Whenever you're given a khutbah or there is a lecture, I like to look into the audience and see how many are immigrants and how many look like they are people that were either born here or they have accepted Islam sometime during their life. And usually here is what you get. Okay, there is a lot of distraction going on, so please settle down, inshallah. Okay. And here is usually what I like to do. Take a look at the people, take a look at who is present, and that gives you an idea, does this masjid reflect the reality of the demographics of the Muslim community or does it not? Let me put it another way. 40% of us are immigrants. 60% of the Muslims are people that have accepted Islam, or these are second, third, or fourth generation Muslims. You come into the masjid and you see that 99% of the people who are attending the masjid are immigrants. Immediately you don't know what happened to the other people. How come they are not in the masjid? How come when we have an event, it seems like only the immigrants are interested in it? How come in the khutbah you see mostly are immigrants? I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself. But the issue is what happened to the children? Where are they? And what this does is that it gives you an idea that as a Muslim community, we're not really paying attention to this idea of our youth and who are going to be the next Muslims. There was a report by some Muslim sociologists. A sociologist is somebody that studies group behavior. And in it they came to this conclusion, that in the next 20 years, only 10% of the second and third Muslim generation will remain Muslims. And the rest of the people, or the rest of these potentially would have been Muslims, will no longer be Muslims. Now these are scary numbers. And you would ask yourself, what happened? Where did they go? Where are they? How come they're not here? And all you have to do is just look into our own Islamic centers, and that would give you an indication. And that will give you an indication that there is something definitely wrong with this picture. So inshallah we would like to shed some light as far as what is it that we have done. Usually with any immigrant community, regardless of their background, regardless of their religious affiliation, regardless of anything, they go through certain phases. When they first come in, they want to stick together. And then what they want to do after that is that they want to build places of worship or community centers. And then after that they say, well, we do have the places of worship, we do have the places of the community center, but we need something else for our children. And then they want to build schools for the children. And then after that they say, well, we have the schools, we have this, we have that, but we would like to make a contribution to the society that we are living in. And I believe that as far as the Muslim community, I believe that we are still stuck in the first and the second stage. And that is very dangerous. Also, you can take a look at our own homes. And that will give you an idea of what is going on with our youth. Give you an example. Usually they say that there are 3 gaps between us and our youth. There is what we refer to as the cultural gap. There is a generational gap, and then there is a language barrier. And what happens is that depending on how the family deals with it, the barrier can be so big that the family members do not really know each other, or they really cannot deal with one another, and that's a very scary thing. Give you a few examples. When I say cultural barrier, some immigrants moved in the area with the hope that one day they're going to go back home. You all know what I'm talking about? And your parents are constantly speaking about one day we will go back home. So here's what they did. We come in here with usually, and the idea is that we're going to be living I'm just here to do my studies. And then it goes on to the PhD, and then just make a little more money, let the kids finish high school. And what are you saying in the process? One day we're going to go back home. One day we're going to go back home. So 25 years go by, you've been telling your kid that one day we're going to go back home, a home that he has never seen. The only thing that he knows about that home is you talking about it, and you yourself, you've never gone there. So what we ended up doing is that we created what we call the in-between zone. And that is, we have never made this place a home, and we have really never went back home. So what we end up doing is, where do we belong? We are not there, but we are not here either. And that is very, very scary. Because when you look at it is, you consider yourself here a foreigner, you behave like a foreigner, and then you complain that you've been treated like a foreigner. What do you expect? Of course that's how it's going to happen. And then you keep speaking about this back home idea that never materializes. And it seems like some of us, unfortunately, we reside in America, but we are still living back home. And that is very scary, brothers and sisters. That is very scary. We reside in America, we are physically living in America or residing in America, but we are living somewhere else. And again, you look into this and it just, the way we carry things, it just happens that we are so detached from reality. We are so disconnected from the world outside of us. And the fact that you speak English, the fact that you go out and you work out, that really does not make you part of it. So then you have the cultural gap, and that is you live into different cultures. Somehow the children are never taught that culture, but somehow they are asked to live by the teachings of that culture. And this happens so many times. Give an example. If you come from a culture that greeting your elders as you're sitting down is seen disrespectful. You all know what I'm talking about? Or sometimes, showing people the bottom of your feet is seen as a sign of disrespect. Okay, nothing wrong with that. But how do you expect to pass on these things to your children? And that becomes very problematic. You then have what we call a language barrier. We come in, English is not our first language, at least it's not my first language. And then you have, we speak with an accent, a cute one in my case, at least. But what happens is that there is this language barrier, and if the kid does not speak our language, we don't speak their language, you can see that you just cannot communicate. And here is the problem with speaking in a language that you know and a language that you understand. Please pay attention. Some language we know and some language we understand. If you speak to somebody in a language that they understand, you go to their head. If you speak to somebody in a language that they know, you go to their heart. Let me say that again. If you speak to somebody in a language that they know, you go to their head. I'm sorry. In a language that they understand, you go to their head. If you speak to them in a language that they know, you go to their heart. And what happens is that we are so limited in only speaking in language that we understand. And yes, we are connecting at a mental level, at a logical level, but as far as emotionally, there is none of that connection. Because the language that is used in the process is a language that is understood, not a language that is known by both parties. And then even if you were born here as a parent, you grew up here, you speak perfect English, there is what we refer to as the cultural gap. People speak about, oh, you should have been there when I was growing up. We only had 4 channels and, We didn't have a remote. My head was the remote because my dad would tap on my head and I have to go and change the channel and come back. We only had 4 channels back then. And this is, but what happens is that they say that there has been a generational shift in the process. And every day that passes by, this gap between us and our youth is only getting wider and wider and wider. More important than this, or more devastating than this, is the actual time that is spent there. See, in order to connect with somebody, you must spend time with them. And the last thing that we do is we spend time with our children. There was a study that I just started reading today, done at Columbia University. And they were looking into youth that actually have dinner with their parents and youth that do not have dinner with their parents. Now you'd think that this is a no-brainer. What does that mean? Dinner with your parents? Of course, everybody knows how important that is. But in reality, we really do not know that. I have shared some of this with some of you maybe before, or you've heard me say. In a recent study, it was found out that a father spends 17 minutes a day with his children, and a mother spends 34 minutes a day with her children. I love the language of numbers because numbers don't lie, and they are universal. Brothers and sisters, if you sleep 8 hours a day, that is equivalent to 3 months of the year. So we spend 3 months of the year sleeping. Some of us will sleep more, some of us sleep less, but if we sleep 8 hours a day, that is equivalent to 3 months of the year. If you work 8 hours a day, and most people do not really work 8 hours because they leave an hour before, an hour after, that is equivalent to 4 months of the year. Right there you have got 7 months of the year you have not seen your children. You have not seen them physically, you have not seen them because you were either sleeping or you were somewhere at work. By the way, 8 months is equivalent to 4. So 5 months now. Now you are left with 9 months of the year you have not seen them. You're left with only 3 months. Take time for the phone call, take time for this, take time for that. They say that it comes down to 17 minutes a day with a father and 34 minutes a day with the mother. That is very scary. Now sometimes we are physically together, but we are not really together. Meaning that yes, dad is home, but he is busy doing his project. Or the children are home, but they're busy doing their homework. Or everybody is there, they're watching Desperate Housewives together. Okay? What happens is that, yes, you can call this physical togetherness, but there is really nothing that is going on. And especially with television. Television, by the way, is a very scary thing. The thing about television is that it keeps or it brings close those who are far away, and it keeps far away those who are close to us. I'll give you an example. You see natural disasters. Fire in this place, tsunami in this place, earthquake in this place. Now these are people who are thousands and thousands of miles away from us. They interview them on TV, and what do you say? You know their names. You know their address. How many dogs they had. How many cars they lost. You know so much information about them, even though they are living thousands and thousands away from you. It is bringing close those who are far away, but it is keeping away those who are close to us. Because in the process, as we're watching, we're not connecting with these people. To give you an example, do you remember a few years ago when the blackout in the East Coast, in New York and Canada and parts of Pennsylvania, they had no electricity? I was reading some of the comments. What did people do? Because if you have no electricity, you have no internet, you have no TV, there is nothing going on. So this guy, he's talking, he said, I've been married to my wife for 17 years. We spoke more in the past 4 days than we did in the entire 17 years combined. Why is this? Well, when you're sitting there, people just put on the TV, they go onto their internet, they're reading a book, they're finishing a project. But he said, there was nothing else to do besides just sit there and talk. And said, we've actually talked more in 4 days than the entire time that we spent in marriage for the past 17 years. And that is very scary for us. That is very, very scary. Stevie, I once met, doing some counseling, And this sister said, the first thing I do when I come home is that I turn the TV on. And I said, why do you do that? And she said, it gives me a sense that other people are living in the house with me. And what happens is that sometimes we know the TV characters more than we even know our own family members. You all watch Seinfeld? Maybe Friends? Simpsons? Happy Days? South Park? Yeah. But what happens is that sometimes people know some movie or TV characters so well, better than they know their own family members. And again, that just, it gets very, very scary. Another issue is that because of this cultural gap, the language barrier, the generational gap that we're speaking of, it seems also that sometimes the parents are so disconnected and so detached from what happens in their children's school. Give you an example. If you're a parent, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but please answer the following questions. Have you met all your children's teachers? If you have, please raise your hand. Every single one of them. You actually know them by name and they know you. Every single one of them. That's actually very impressive. See that the dads are really doing a good job there. Now what you see happening is that I would come into some parents and say, do you really know what happens in high school? Do you really know what happens in elementary school? Do you really know what happens in middle school? What is the most difficult age for children, by the way? Who's at 13? Who's at 16? Who's at 16? Wrong. 13. What is the most difficult?
12 and 14.
Why is that? See, now, they say that it is between 9 and 13. Between 9 and 13. Why is this? Because at this point, they want to make an impression, and especially in around, late elementary, beginning of middle school, no kid wants to be labeled as the weird kid. And that is, by the way, around the age of 13 is when most kids pick up smoking. I was saying, this young? Yes, this young. That is when they pick up smoking. You say, well, why is this? Because of the amount of pressure that is there on them by their peers. And then what happens is that at this point you ask these parents, again, do you really know what happens in your children's school? Do you know what it is that they talk about? One time, Barbara Walters, what does she do? 60 minutes or 2020?
She does the view.
No. Well, I think it was 60 minutes. Okay, what they did, 2020. Okay. Anyways, 2020, 60 minutes. What they did is that they had a group of high schoolers and they had their parents. And they had the high schoolers just talk to see what it is that they talk about and see what the parents would think that their kids are talking about. And now these were non-Muslim American kids. And you would see the shock on the faces of the parents. That, my God, I never thought that my kid would ever talk about such a subject. I never thought that my kid would actually entertain such a thing. I could not believe it. Unfortunately, many of you would say the same thing. And that is, I never thought that my kids would ever be talking about this. Or my kids would actually be entertaining such a thing that is going on. So that becomes very problematic. And the older they get, the more difficult it gets. In Newsweek magazine, they had, again, a study of what influences children most, or teenagers specifically most. And they had a list of 10 things. They said, where do you get most of your information from? Parents were not number 1, not number 2, not number 3, not number 4, not number 5, not number 6. They came in at number 7. Parents came in at number 7. They were preceded by movie stars, they were preceded by magazines, by teachers, by school, by their peers, by what they see here, what they see there, and then maybe number 7 would be the children. And now you would want to ask yourself, well, why is this happening? And I think that this is a topic. I think it's a community topic. It's not just one person's topic. But inshallah, I would like to shed some light on this issue. My biggest thing that I have seen in the midst of doing counseling, because alhamdulillah, people do come to the masjid for the sake of counseling, but usually most parents do come in for counseling with their children when it is a bit late in them. Ibrahim ibn Adham was one time approached by a man who had a big smile on his face, and he said, "Inna Allah qad razaqani biwaladi wa uridu an asta'dinaka, uridu an astansihaka kayfa urabbi." He said, Allah has blessed me with a son. It was and I'm here to consult you, how should I raise my son? فَقَالَ كَمْ عُمُرُهُ. So Ibrahim ibn Adham, who was a scholar back then, said, "How old is your son?" And the man with a big smile on his face said, "عُمْرُهُ شَهْرٌ وَاحِدٌ." He is 1 month old. Ibrahim ibn Adham looked at him and he said, "Wallahi laqad fatak al-qitar." Said, "By Allah, it is too late for you." The story is a bit exaggerated. Here's what he meant. He said, you went out, you picked the mother for the child, you had the child, and now you're coming to consult me? You should be consulting me at the time that you were about to pick his mother for him, not when you already had that done. The point is, this is really what is going on. So these parents would come in at a very late stage and say, "You know what, my kid, he is smoking, he picked up some bad habit, he's been drinking the other day, he came in wrong. Jay, can you please do something about it?" Well, mashallah, may Allah help you in this problem of yours, but did it really happen that one day he just decided to smoke, one day he decided to drink? Or were there warning signs that we did not pay attention to? And if you're not spending time, you cannot pay attention to these warning signs. My biggest thing that I have seen is there is not enough time that is spent as a family unit. Or as Sheikh Sa'adullah, we put it, we live under the same roof, but we have different lives in the process. And that is so unbelievably true. We live under the same roof, but we have different lives in the process. That is very sad. So that's number 1. The fact that we do not spend enough time with our children. When I say time, I really mean time. We get into, I don't want to spend enough time with my kids, but I spend quality time with my kids. That's just a lie. That is really a lie. We'll just say this, 20 minutes a day, it's really, really good. And just all you have to do is just look into your conversation with your children as you're coming back from school. You're driving them back saying, "Hey, how was the school? Okay. What did you do? Nothing. Alhamdulillah. Okay, everybody's good." Isn't that really what happens? And because of time, they say that there are 8 different levels of interaction as far as depth, or 8 levels of communication as far as depth is concerned. The number 1 level, or the first level, is what we call cliche questions. These are questions that you ask and you really don't mean it, and you really don't even listen to the question. You know how you're passing by and you see somebody, "Hey, how are you doing?" Okay, I remember, I think I told you this before, when I first came to the US, somebody said, "Hey, how are you doing?" So I said, "Well, I woke up this morning and it was really sunny when and the guy is gone. The person is gone. He said, "What happened? You just said, 'How are you doing?'" But that's what we call is a cliche. That's just stuff that you say out of respect. You really don't mean it. You don't mean the question. And you don't even wait for the answer, because to begin with, the question wasn't really real. It was just, yeah, be polite, be good, and just say, "Yeah, how are you doing?" and all that stuff. Okay. Then they say the second level, or the second depth, is, they say that it's about exchanging facts. Did you pay the bill? Did you pay the bill? Because what we want is now, we just want to exchange facts. Did you make that phone call? And then most people, they say they go to bed, and that's how far they've gotten. That's really as far as they've gotten. How are you? Alhamdulillah. Did you pay the bill? Yeah, okay. Alhamdulillah. Everybody goes to bed. Yeah, again, the issue is that not enough time is spent. The sad part, I don't mean to offend anybody. MashaAllah, if you are a father and a mother, you are working, alhamdulillah, good for you. But it seems that sometimes we live in this society where we're constantly wanting to provide what is best, what is better for our children. But in the midst of that, we never know what is missing. Somebody wrote a book and he called it After 17. This guy, for 17 years, did not take a single day off. He did not take a single day off. He was working straight for 17 years. So he came in one time to his son and he asked his son to do something for him, and the son said no. The father was so offended and he said, for 17 years I did not take a single day off because for you, and now you're telling me no? And the son looked at him and he said, Dad, for 17 years you were never home. For 17 years, you're looking at it and saying that I just want really what is best for my children. But in the process, because we get engaged in this cycle where we confuse our wants and our needs, and what happens is that you get into it and then it just snowballs. Because there is always something better than what you have. If you have a house, alhamdulillah, there is always a better house that's for sale. If you have a computer, there is always a faster computer. If you have a TV, there is always a bigger and a better TV. What do you have now? The plasma or the high definition TV? What do you have at home? 64-inch TV? You know what? There is a 72-inch TV that just came out. Now everybody would want that. And in the process we get into this cycle of always wanting to improve the lifestyle, not the quality of the life that we have, but rather the style of the life that we have. And what we end up doing is that we sacrifice the quality for the sake of the style. And that is problematic, brothers and sisters. Yes, on the surface, it looks like we are creating this beautiful lifestyle, but in reality, the quality of that lifestyle really stinks. I was once counseling a teenager. His parents, mashallah, very well-to-do, very wealthy, hard-working parents, and they did very well in providing for their children, bought him a new car, gave him money, and they said, all you have to do is just go to school. That's all we ask for, just go to school. Anything and everything else is paid for, you don't need to worry about it. The son was caught selling marijuana. He was caught selling marijuana. So here I am, talking to the parents, and I said, well, what is going on? And the father said it, with so much regret and resentment, and he said, every day I wake up in the morning, including the weekends, at 7 o'clock I'll be at my job, and I come back by 9 o'clock, and I'm very tired for this kid. And yes, and the mom, well, we do the same thing. I wake up at 7 o'clock, I have to be there by 9 o'clock, I am back home, and we're all doing it for the kid. I said, who was raising your children? If you are out between 7 and 9, 7 days a week, who was raising the children? But we provided for them. Look at him, he is driving a car that his friends are not driving, he goes to this prestigious school, he's got this, he's got, fine. I see that you have provided a very good lifestyle. But I question the quality of the life that you are providing for them. A father comes, tells me that, summertime, I give my son $2,000 and I say, go into the stock market and see what you can do with it for the summer. I say, brother, that is very good, mashallah. You are teaching your children how to make a living, but do they know how to make a life? They know how to make a living, but do they really know how to make a life? And again, we get into this cycle and this cycle and this cycle. But bottom line is this. If you want to have a better relation, and you must have a better relationship, you must spend time. If it means that you have to sacrifice the style of your life to save the quality of your life, please do it. But you must spend time with your children. The second issue is, the idea of what is home for us. As an immigrant community, we are so confused with this. Let me ask the youth this. How many of you were born in America? How many of you were born in the US? The youth? Okay, thank you. Put your hands down. How many of you are Americans? I once said, how many of you are Americans? Okay. One time, we had about, I would say, maybe 40 youth. And I asked the same question. I said, how many of you were born in the US? All of them except two raised their hands. And then I said, how many of you are Americans? Everybody put their hands down. And I looked at one of them and he said, tell me, where are you from? He goes, well, my mom is from Wisconsin and my dad is from Palestine. I said, okay, good. So where are you from? He said, well, my mom's from Wisconsin and my dad is from Palestine. I said, mashallah, very good for you. Now, where are you from? And for the third time he said, my mom is from Wisconsin and my dad is from Palestine. I said, but where are you from? See, what happens is that we're confusing many things. And sometimes that includes even confusing, our understanding of so many things that are taking place. I just, right here, I said, well, how many of you are from America? And I saw some people going, and they look and see, what are other people doing, and whether they should be raising their hands or they shouldn't be raising their hands. We have to come with terms. With the fact that, be it in the long run, be it in the short run, this is home for us. At this point, this is home for us. Deal with it, people. This is really home. Okay? And sometimes, why is it okay for somebody to say that they are Egyptians, but it's not okay for others to say they're Americans? Or why is it okay for them to say they come from this place, but it's not okay for others to say they're from this place? And that is why I have a problem with people who say, when we go back home, we're going to be better Muslims. You hear this a lot. When we go back home, we're going to be better Muslims. I have a problem with that. Because in the Quran Allah says, لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. That to Allah belongs whatever is in heaven and whatever is on earth. Meaning that you are always, and you always have the potential of being a good servant of Allah, regardless of where you are. And that is why one time a man by the name of Hudayt came to the Prophet, peace be upon him. He was in Mecca, he was a Muslim, his community were non-Muslims, and they told him, Hudayt, we know you became a Muslim, you can still, live with us, we like you. And some people came to him and they said, Hudayt, you cannot be a good Muslim living with these people, you've got to leave this place. So he came to him, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, Ya Hudayka, and then listen to what he said, Aqim as-salah. Okay? He said, Ya Hudayka, aqim as-salah. وَأَيْنَمَا أَصَبْتَ خَيْرًا فَهِيَ أَوْ كَمَا قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, O Hudayt, وَهْجُرِ السُّوء. He said, O Hudayt, do two things. He said, establish your salah and shun evil and reside wherever it is that you wish. The conditions are that your ability to establish salah and provide for your morality, and the other thing is that your ability to shun away evil. And then he said, the land, al-ardu lillah, al-khalqu khalqullah, wal-biladu biladullah, fa'aqim minha haythu shi'ta. But we have to come in terms with this, that this is home. So let us treat it as if this is home, people. Whether it be permanent, whether it be temporary, this is going to be home, so deal with it. And because when we are in this state of foreigners, that's what we create. Oh my God, I don't even know where I am from. I'm so confused about something like this. And really, we do not want that. A third point that I think is also very important, and I get this from the youth that I deal with, is that many youth would tell us that parents do not listen. My parents do not listen to me. One time, a kid was asked to describe his father. He said, well, in 2 words or in 1 word, how would you describe your father? He said, big mouth. And he said, well, what would you wish for him to be? And he said, big ears. He said, it's nothing but just constantly bombarding the kid with, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. But the parents really never listen. So one thing is when you are talking to the kids, again, depending on where you came from, how we thought, what we ate, what we wear, everything was dictated on us. But that's not the case that is not the case anymore. So you've got to do some serious listening as to what is going on with these kids, what is going on in their mind. And then finally, how and what kind of Islam do we want to instill in our children? Sometimes we confuse culture with religion. And we don't know what we're teaching. Are we teaching them our culture, or are we teaching them the religion? So we say, for example, and this happens a lot, that in Islam everybody is equal. In Islam there are no racism, there is no discrimination. In Islam everything is good, and in Islam, but don't you ever dare to bring a black boy or a black girl, like a Hispanic or a Latino home. I'll kill you if you ever do that. So he said, but wait a minute, was this really Islam or was this really the culture? See, because I'm really confused which is which. And they don't only that. But sometimes the way that we present Islam to them, it is this big prison called Islam, and we want to teach you the stuff that you cannot do. Haram, 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 haram. It's like we call this big huge circle that we call haram. One time it was so funny, I was listening to these kids and they were just arguing. And they're like, we're talking about 7, 8-year-old kids. And they're talking and somebody said Nickelodeon. And the other kid goes, Astaghfirullah, you watch Nickelodeon? That is haram right there. And I'm listening to this. I said, that is really interesting. Maybe some parts of Nickelodeon may be haram. But I'm listening to this and I say, I wonder how long this can keep going. See, haram initially may be something that they can bear. But when you go outside and you face reality, you know what? The challenges are a lot. And if they have not been equipped properly, then unfortunately, failure would be the logical consequence of such a thing. So we would have to look into, how is Islam to be presented? Because we can constantly say haram, haram. It's not a big deal to tell a kid that such a thing is haram. But I think a bigger deal is, can you provide an alternative? That is the challenge. In Islam, alcohol is haram, but you can have your mocha, mashallah. You can have your nasty iced coffee, mashallah. If that's what you like, if that's what you like. You can have tea, you can have juice, you can have this, you can have that. But when it said this is haram, it gave you an alternative of so many other halals. It tells you that, you cannot do 1, 2, 3, but you can do up to 1,000,000 other things that are halal. So the way that we present Islam, it just makes it like, I really don't want to be part of this. There's too much on me. There's too much for my system. I really cannot handle that. So we have to be a bit creative as to how it is that we present this deen of Allah. I'd like to tell the story of just different things as to how parents instill these things in their kids. One time a group of a Muslim family, they went to watch baseball. I hate baseball, by the way, but just pray with me. And as they're watching the baseball game, supposedly you're supposed to sit, depending on the team that you're cheering or rooting for, there is the home side and then there is a visiting side. And the Muslim family, they just sat wherever. And it turned out that they were sitting on the visiting side. No, I'm sorry. They were cheering for the visiting team, but they're sitting on the home side. So the visiting team is playing and they hit a home run. So they all get up and they start, cheering for their team, their hijabis and their, So somebody from the back yells, you, this and this Muslim, sit down. Because everybody else is quiet on that side of the stadium. So they sat down. The son takes a look back and goes, Dad, he's not big, you can take him. Go and just do something about it. So the father looked at him and he said, son, you should be very proud today. He said, Dad, what is there to be proud of? The guy just called us this and this Muslim and you're asking me to be proud? He said, son, you should be very proud that people were able to tell that you are a Muslim by simply looking at you. That is really nice. To instill such lessons, in kids where they know what, yeah, that's really good. The guy knew that I was a Muslim. Instead of unfortunately hiding away. But the thing is, give them something to be proud of, especially nowadays. Everybody, kids at school. The kid's name is Osama, and he's got to go to school. I mean, poor kid. That's what he's called. What do you do? How do you deal with something like this? Who's all the stuff that is going on? Everybody knows that I'm a Muslim. But how do I deal with something like this? So what happens is, now the challenge becomes greater in the classes. That we have to revisit our understanding of the deen, and also equally as important is to revisit as to how it is that we are presenting this deen to our children. If haram is the only word that we use at home, then guess what? Islam is not really all that great. Okay. Not that in essence it's not great, but what we're making it to be is not really great. I'd like to conclude by this story. Again, some of you might have heard me say this before, but I feel that it's so relevant. These two people, two business people, working next to one another. One guy sells vinegar, the other guy sells candy. The guy that sells vinegar, his business was just absolutely excellent. And the guy that sells candy, his business was just absolutely terrible. People walk in, they don't buy anything, they go next door to the vinegar guy and they walk with gallons on gallons of vinegar. So 6 months down the road, the guy decides to close down his candy business. But he tells himself, before I go there, let me talk to this guy and see what is it about him. So he goes to him and said, I really don't mean to offend you. I said candy. It tastes very sweet and it smells very nice. Now you sell vinegar. It smells very nasty and it tastes very bitter. Yet your business is better than my business. How come? The guy looked at him and he said, I sell vinegar with a candy taste and you sell candy with a vinegar taste. It has nothing to do with the product that you will sell, but it has everything to do with how you will present the product that you will sell. Similar to this is, how do we present this deen of Allah to our children? Because if we are not able even to sell it to our children, how can we expect to sell it outside of our families? And that again becomes very problematic. Okay. And to the parents, just have a quick exercise for you, just to tell you how much your children know. I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, by the way. Can anybody give me like the Prophet's 3 names, like the first 3 names, him, his dad, and his grandfather? You. The Prophet's like first names. Muhammad. Once I asked this kid, what's the Prophet's last name? He goes, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So what's his name? Anybody? His name? How many of you know that? Okay, Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib. What about his mom's name? Only the youth. How many names? Amina bin Fuad. What is her father's name? What was her father's name? The Prophet's mother. Let me ask you this. What number is Michael Jordan's jersey?
23.
What does he have for breakfast? Now, what does he have for breakfast? Come on, you've seen the commercial.
Oh, milk.
Wheaties, yes. Now, what does he drink? What type of underwear does he wear? Hence, right? Again, imagine this. We actually know the number. What size is his shoes? What kind of shoes does he wear? What size is it? Do you see what is going on? We actually know so much about this guy, including what type of underwear he wears. Does that give you an idea of really what is going on? But that is just, like I said, this was not meant to answer these questions, but rather to provoke us in the process and maybe reevaluate. If I can say anything, if I can beg you of anything at this point is, please spend time with your children. When I say spend time, I'm not talking about spend time watching TV together. I'm talking about literally just get to know your children better and have your children get to know you better. Just really, truly get to know each other better. Now, I was told that, am I supposed to be asking questions? Or maybe you can leave some comments or room for questions, inshallah. If not, then we'll carry on with the exercise.
What's your opinion about disciplining?
Beat the suckers. I have to believe that. If it is appropriate and if it is for the right thing, then yes, as a parent you do have that responsibility of disciplining your children. If you're asking about can you hit your children, it is a form of disciplining. Does it work? Again, it really depends. If you hit the child because they spilled milk, but the kid is only 2 years old, he doesn't have his muscles together yet, and you think that hitting them is the appropriate punishment, have a serious problem with that. So it depends on what is being used and how it is being used and at what time is it being used. And that would, but as a parent you definitely have that right and obligation to discipline your children. But again, what you want to do is you want to keep them within the family. Sometimes parents can go so overboard with disciplining their children that I know many stories, actually horror stories, about kids that just ended up leaving their homes. They just said that this is not an environment that we want to live in. It got so bad, they just left. Simply because the parents could not handle the disciplining part properly. And that becomes very problematic. You just a stretching? Yeah. That's a question. I said that you mentioned that there are 8 levels of interaction depth. What are they? You don't know what they're talking about here? There is a lecture that we do with Sheikh Sadallah and myself at Wise Living, and we do talk about this. Remember this, that communication is the transferring of information between two people. And then you speak about there is one entity, another entity, and the medium that you use in between. But when we speak about the depth is, what is it that you are really talking about? I said there is the cliche part, I won't mention all of them, but then there is the exchanging facts part, and then exchanging of ideas. That is a deeper level. And then there are exchanging of feelings. I feel this way, I feel that way. And then there is a level where you actually understand what is being conveyed as far as feelings are concerned by the other party. And then there is even one of the deep levels is feeling with the other person, what we call empathy. So what happens is that in order to accomplish this, people would have to be so comfortable and they would have to take the time in getting there. But then unfortunately, that is so unbelievably rarely done in the process. And that is very problematic when people do this. Also similar to this is what the Quran says about, not necessarily about the communication part, but what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to is Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, Khalaqa al-Insan, Allamahu al-Bayan, that the most merciful has taught the Quran, created man. I'm talking the concept of Bayan. And that is, Bayan means to clearly understand and then